Well, it's April the 12th, and the topic for today, I wanted to address this commission on the Supreme Court that President Biden announced on Friday. Supposedly bipartisan, and I guess that there certainly are going to be some Republicans on it. There's going to be a total of 36 members. I think it's chaired by some Lawrence Tribe, a famous Harvard ultra-liberal, and somebody from the Bush Justice Department who I don't believe I've ever heard of before. But the point, it's going to be a mixture of all sorts of different people, activist groups, former judges, lawyers, scholars, etc. Apparently pretty heavily weighted to the Democrat liberal side. I've heard numbers as high as 3-1. And the idea is supposed to figure out what needs to be done about the Supreme Court. And okay, something needs to be done about the Supreme Court? Really? I mean, what led to that decision? I mean, they didn't, back when Obama was in, nobody seemed to see a need to do much about it, did they? You see, this is all one of these kind of reactive things. But the problem is there's very little they actually can do about it. There's one thing they can do about it, which is what we call packing it. If they can get the Democrats, or I guess a majority in this, to end the filibuster in the Senate, it's quite possible you could add additional seats. And there's really nothing else that in the world of real politics can be done. Now they talk about, well, we're going to study all kind of neat ideas. Oh, maybe we'll have rotating judges from the appellate courts to the Supreme Court. Or maybe we'll have term limits on Supreme Court justices, or whatever. All that would require a constitutional amendment, which won't happen. It takes a 2/3 vote in both houses and 34, I guess a total of 38 states to ratify it. And almost except Nebraska and maybe almost all states have bicameral legislatures too, so it's got to be passed by majority vote in each of those. It's just not going to happen. There's not going to be a constitutional amendment that's anyway going to move the Supreme Court in a direction which Joe Biden wants. Okay, so what you're really left with is ending the filibuster and adding judges. Now, then they talk about, well, how do you rationalize this? Well, the number. Well, I think logic says very clearly, if you're talking scholarly thinking and not just some kind of hack job, that obviously you want an odd number of judges. And why do we want that? Because so they can make a decision. With an odd number of judges, you're going to have a decision, right? I mean, unless somebody recuses themselves, and there's not much you can do about that happening. It rarely happens at the Supreme Court level, but it does occasionally. Most of the time, it's just when the person wasn't there to hear the case when it was first presented. They generally don't jump in late. I don't know if there's any rule that says they can't, but it's been the policy not to. And sometimes, if there's a serious enough conflict of interest, sometimes somebody will recuse himself. Historically, I sometimes think it's more like because they just don't want to make a decision on the subject for some reason. I mean, I think, remember the Nixon Supreme Court decision that allowed the subpoena to be executed on the Nixon tapes. I think the Chief Justice recused himself at that time. And I don't think he had any real conflict of interest. I just think he didn't want to. I guess he didn't want to be part of the ruling that was going to go one way, and at the same time, basically, I guess he couldn't see a good reason to vote against it either. Huh? Well, anyway, so, but I digress, as a comedy character from the 80s would say. So we agree. I think we agree that all scholars are going to agree that they need to have an odd number. We have an odd number, 9, which is the second highest number they've ever had. Previously they had 10, which wasn't a good idea. So what's the case to go to a higher odd number, which would either be 11 or 13, right? I mean, I can think of no logical case why we should need more people there. Does anybody have one why you would need more people? I can only think of a partisan case, not a logical case. The partisan case is we just don't like the way the cookie crumbled in the last administration, and our side had bad luck, and so therefore we should do something radical to rectify it, rather than let the thing work itself out over time. And we never know what's going to happen in the future anyhow. For instance, we already have Chief Justice Roberts obviously drifting to the left, and some of the Trump appointees have surprised the conservatives by being more moderate than anybody thought they would be. And the worst case with the conservative court anyhow usually is that they simply keep the things as they are rather than actually go radically another direction. Remember, this 9-judge Supreme Court has, over the, not necessarily the individuals, but that structure has promoted everything from, the desegregation of schools starting in the 50s, all sorts of amendments and to the capital punishment laws and great restrictions on how that could be done, and ultimately gay marriage. I mean, so what I'm getting at is that the left has pretty much got what they wanted from the Supreme Court over the years, and the idea that somehow it needs to be made even more liberal seems to me to be completely asinine. But, so, in other words, the only thing that really can be done here from a practical political point of view is to end the filibuster and add new judges, who presumably it would be far left. Everything else won't happen. It might be a term limit, might be a good idea, takes a constitutional amendment, not a law. I mean, at any law they pass, other than that, the only thing the Constitution seems to clearly give the Congress the right to do is to set the number of judges. And I think that, and it also says that they will serve for their term in office, and that their salaries will not be reduced during that term. So, by and large, what we're looking at is a packing thing, which, of course, Joe Biden once said was a boneheaded idea, but I think that was when he was a little bit more sane than he is today. And obviously, he's obviously being manipulated by somebody. Barack Obama, perhaps. I mean, I kind of really wonder who the real power behind the throne is in this administration anyhow. Is Joe really coming up with this on his own? Probably not. He's being managed by either his staff, his wife, or maybe Barack Obama behind the scenes, because it seems to me that he's simply not the person everybody thought they were voting for who voted for him. I at least have the good knowledge to know that I didn't vote for him. So, but I mean, for those that did, that thought they were voting for somebody more moderate than Trump, I think that they really goofed up on that one. But anyway, so that's my viewpoint on this commission. It's a farce. It should be declared to be a farce. It either will produce no good recommendation or will produce a split decision, I think. And probably will just simply recommend adding more judges, but I don't know what possible rationale that isn't partisan thinking could really come into it, other than I just don't like the current configuration of personalities, and I think that by adding more seats at this juncture in time, we could get a different outcome. Again, it has an odd number, which is good for decision. Now, why that's important, I should mention real quickly. That if there was an even number and they actually tied, then what you'd have is each appellate district in the entire country, which is 11 of them, I believe. Check me on that. Maybe it's 12. At any rate, and they could all come up with different decisions. So you'd have different interpretations of the law and the Constitution in each of these jurisdictions with nobody to resolve it. And that's why it's good to have an odd number. And that's probably why they went from 10 to 9 back in, 1869, I think it was. So we've been this way for a long time, and I think that this is truly disingenuous to suggest this should even be considered. So, at any rate, if you like these videos, please subscribe and forward them to anybody that's interested, and please make comments. I like to see what kind of discussion might be generated. That'll be all for now.